Welcome to Do It for the Gram, an Enneagram podcast with your host, certified Enneagram coach Milton Stewart, where we do it for the Enneagram, not Instagram. We make moves to improve our lives and those in our community. So I'm pretty excited today. Usual, if you've listened to my episodes, I'm starting a series, and it's a short series, but it's about being. And I'm going to go over each different triad, center of intelligence, the thing that they want to really happen, what they want to really be, and what they struggle with, and why it's so important. And so this episode is about being heard for 8, 9s, and 1s. So it's important for every single person to be heard, to be seen, and to be safe. And each type and each center of intelligence has a specific one that they connect to more deeply simply because of the connection to their type, where they're on the Enneagram, and their primary emotion. So we're going to get into that on this episode. So for our humanity's sake, for us to show up in a way that shows all of us, the way that we can bring each part of ourselves to the spaces that we inhibit or occupy, one of the most important things is that we have these 3 different areas that exist within that space. And that includes being heard, right? Being safe, and being seen. And I'll explain a little bit more about each one, especially in different episodes. This episode, we're talking about types 8s, 9s, and 1s, the body types. And so for body types, it's very important that they be heard. One of the biggest things that 8, 9s, and 1s struggle with is not feeling like they're being heard by the people around them. Yes, even 8s and 1s, even though they communicate a little bit more maybe than 9s at times, they still a lot of times feel like they're not being heard. And or if they're not being heard, then this is something that rubs them the real wrong way. Okay. So this is very important, and this connects to the primary emotion of the body types, which is anger. And if you've ever heard me teach before, when I talk about the primary emotion of any type, any and every emotion is not negative or positive. It's more or less how we use it. It's just going to depend if it's a beneficial, or if it's something that's going to destroy something, right? Or detrimental. So when I say anger, 8s, 9s, and 1s, there's this anger, the primary emotion of anger. One, because the world isn't the way they feel it should be. And that can be for a gambit of reasons, but a lot of times there's a feeling that people aren't treated right for some reason. They aren't treated right for some reason. And this really, for these 3 types specifically, this really creates a bodily anger around it, okay? A deep bodily anger around it on a more consistent basis. So when you talk about these types and you talk about being angry, there's a anger and a force that 8s want to redirect the world and have power to shift any imbalances in power, or anyone or any organization or anything that may be damaging people and abusing power. And so there's an anger around the misuse of power. When it comes to the type 8, right? They can do it, but they're really, what really gets them going, really grinds their gears, is when they see other people doing it to people. So if they see bullying, if they see of any form at any level, they're immediately going to have anger in the body. And 8s, 9s, and 1s, they wake up with anger. Now, 9s and 1s may not be the first to say it or notice it, but 8s definitely usually do. They wake up angry, ready to change the world, like something's wrong. I need to go make a change. I need to go shift it, right? And so 9s, when it comes to anger, and this is kind of, most of us notice about the 9, is that 9s generally, their personality structure shuts off, their ability a lot of times until they do their work to actually feel and recognize the anger that they really do have for life, for things going on that aren't right, that are not fair in the world, the way people are being treated, the way people aren't being included. One of the things that fires up 9s the most is like people not being included. Like, 9s get really upset if they feel other people aren't heard, right? It's like, yeah, but you didn't ask such and such. What about them? What do you think? So those things actually fire them up. They have some anger around that, and obviously around not being heard personally, right? That's a big 9 thing, right? But that's connected to anger. A lot of times, different defense mechanism, maybe narcotization, may numb them out a little bit from necessarily feeling that real anger. But there's a deep anger that runs through the 9, if you all didn't know. And then type 1s, they're more internal anger, holding anger in. A lot of times, one's got the message, that maybe overtly sharing their anger isn't the best thing. Not all ones, trust me. Some are totally fine with expressing it. But many times it may come off as not appropriate in certain situations or certain places. But a big part of their anger is feeling like they have the burden of having to correct and make things right in the world and other people don't, and they get away with stuff. So there's a deep frustration, a deep anger and resentment around. They feel like they have to be responsible for so many things, to do these things, and other people don't. They get to get away and they don't have to do anything. So there's a deep anger around that. All 3, there's always anger around the mismanagement of like human ability to be treated in a fair way, right? In a fair and to a degree equitable way. So these things really hit home hard for these types. These are things that operate in their focus of attention more readily than any other center of intelligence. So this is something to notice and be very aware of. And so what happens is when your primary emotion is anger, right? And you're frustrated and you want things to shift, there are ways that you try to do it by using your voice or using ways of communication. And so what happens is when you're frustrated about something and you do not feel that you can be heard by it, right? It creates more frustration and it can send 8s, 9s, and 1s in a kind of a personality spiral, right? Or a lower end of their type structure can come out, right? Where you can actually see maybe some of the detrimental anger kind of come out, right? Some of the anger that could be a little bit less healthy for the situation. Let me say that, right? So they do have to be aware of that. So one of the biggest things around 8s, 9s, and 1s dealing with anger and not being heard is each one of them has something specific that they have to work on so that they can be heard, right? Because there is an impediment to them feeling and being heard by others. And our personality structure is that ego trap that puts us in that same personality spiral going down that's unhealthy, right? That doesn't get us what we truly want. It just produces more of what we don't want, which for the 8s, 9s, and 1s, it's like they're not being heard even more. So before I get into that, a really quick story. And I work with a lot of different organizations and different places, and I love it. And I absolutely love it because I love to see team dynamics and work with them and help them work through things so that they can be, like amazing. They can grow, they can heal. It touches every level, right? So I was working with an organization, and one of the things that frustrated a type 8 leader was that they would ask for feedback or for people to tell them what they really thought, right? And no one would say anything. No one would actually respond. They really wouldn't say it. And the 8s, we all know, 9s and 1s as well to a degree for sure, because they're body types. They're a little bit more in tune with their body and what's happening with another person, right? So the way that 9s can feel there's a disconnection between them and another person, 8s can also feel pretty deeply if something's off, right? They can feel it. They may not always be right about what it is, but they say something's off with this. And so this type 8 leader was feeling that, even though they weren't getting words or anything for that. And this 8 leader, which is going to lead to this next part, didn't realize that a big part of how they led and the energy that they brought was actually taken away from 2 other areas, right, inside of the Enneagram that people need, right? So people need to be seen, right? And people need to be safe. But the energy that this type structure brought, being their primary emotion, is anger, and they're strong and they want to be assertive, and they want to express themselves, right? These people, they didn't feel safe. Not that this leader was necessarily being overly aggressive or anything to a degree, but they didn't feel safe. This 8 leader didn't make it a safe environment for people to share. And so it really frustrated them because it's like I ask you what you want, I want to be heard, but now it's like people not listening to me because you're not responding, telling what you really think. And so it was really, really fascinating to see these dynamics happen because they happen everywhere to a degree, right? And the same thing can happen. I worked for a type 1 leader, and very similar thing happened. Very similar thing. You would want to, they would want, they didn't feel heard. They would say something, they would give us directives, details, but they wouldn't feel like they're actually heard for what they're really trying to say. People would be a little bit timid to say what they think because maybe they'll get edited or judged or critiqued all of a sudden, right? And then maybe even for the 9, like this actually happens for the 9 as well. And it happens in reverse a little bit because sometimes the 9 is so quick to bring in everybody else's opinion and ask them what does everybody else think. They don't always share what they really think and what they really want to get across. And or they take so long to get to what they really want to get across, they've kind of lost the room a little bit. So these are all some challenges. And so for type 8, when we're talking about the challenge of being heard, this is what really kind of stops 8s, 9s, and 1s from being heard based on personality type egoic things that show up. It's me again in another one of those funny commercials to remind you that the Kaizen Community Enneagram program is having open sessions. I do 2 cohorts a year. In this program, you will feel heard, seen, and connected. You will leave the program with way more knowledge, a deeper level of growth, and some lifelong friends. To sign up and learn more, go to kaizen-enneagram-community.mn.co or see the show notes or the Instagram bio link tree. All right, back to the episode. So for the type 8, one of the things that really hurts their ability to be heard in groups and spaces is that sometimes your energy is just too strong in the room sometimes, right? Because they operate at a higher intensity level naturally, when they come into a room and they're just like, they're feeling regular, they're feeling like I'm good. 8s really have to be careful because their energy is strong. It's forceful, it's willful. And even when they're not trying at times, it can come across a little too strong, throw people off balance, right? Unless they know you've worked with them and all these type of things, but it'll throw them off balance. They don't know, like, oh my goodness. And that the whole archetype name of the challenger, right? Sometimes people want to express themselves or say something and not necessarily just be challenged every time, right? That's a lot of energy for other people that they may not always have. And so for 8s wanting to be heard on a consistent basis, part of the work is to dial back some of that forceful energy when you're sharing things, right? Some things are meant to be shared with passion and energy. And I hope that, for all 8s, you build enough rapport, enough connection with the people in whatever room, whatever space that you're really trying to share, whatever place you're really trying to make a difference, that you build enough rapport where they can handle, you know what I'm saying? When you're literally just being yourself. You're like, hey, I'm just trying to be myself and share how I feel, right? And no one takes it like, oh my goodness, they're coming in so strong, right? And then the other part is, remember, you don't have to challenge everything. You don't have to call everybody out and everything out, right? Pick your energy usage wisely. Okay, that's probably a better way. I'm not going to say battle, but pick your energy usage wisely. There are some things that don't have to be responded to. It's like a waste of your time if you respond. So don't do it. Be like, nah, there's another point, there's another purpose that I'm going to get here, and we're going to drill home and get it done, right? Not this like, oop, they said they're wrong, let me get them. So like, or did you, so really pick those things wisely. 8s have a lot of energy, no doubt, because they're fueled by anger, right? In a lot of ways. And so when that's happening, it gives you so much energy in the moment, but it can be draining and exhaustive, right? And 8s may not even know it until obviously their body tries to break down for a while and they have to take time off. So really choose your energy wisely. right? So for eights, if you can dial back some of the intensity when you're communicating, and you can be wise about when you want to challenge someone, you're going to actually be able to be heard more often, more consistently, right? People will actually have an open ear so they can hear you, because that's important. Eights want to be heard very, like, because a lot of times they feel like they know what to do to solve the problem. And a lot of times they do. And so it's very important, eights, if you want to consistently be heard in a space so you can truly make the impact you want to make, you're going to have to modulate a little bit some of the intensity that comes across when you communicate, and being able to kind of, watch how often you challenge things that people say, right? And then last but not least, and this is eights, nines, and ones, but if you can communicate, here's a hack, by the way, type eights and nines and ones to a degree. If you can communicate how you feel before you say it, it actually helps it land better with people. So if you say, "Whoo, this is real frustrating," and then you communicate what you need to share, it's actually really impactful. It gives people the internal preparation to be like, okay, they're frustrated, let me just prepare, because their words may come out a little bit stronger with more energy, right? Or if you say, "This is annoying to me," right? Like, these things actually do help it land better with people, because they know where you're coming from, and your words don't always come exactly with the emotion, but people don't know that the emotion's there. Like, they don't know where it's coming from, like, "Oh, that's so strong." But if people understand, like, "Oh, you're human and you're really frustrated because you care about this situation. I got you. Oh, you're really passionate about it because it affects, oh, got you. I'm listening now. I hear you now, and I can listen with my heart too." So that'll really help eights be heard. Type nines. For type nines, it's a little bit of the reverse to a degree. One thing is that, for type nines, you got to speak up. You know what I'm saying? Like, type nines, you have to speak up. As some people say, something, say it with your chest, And a lot of times, nines at times, depending on what it is, may not know exactly how they feel about, XYZ, if it's not something that's overly important. But there are things, nines, and please don't, for people listening, please don't think that nines I just don't know. I just don't know. There's a lot of stuff they are solid on. I mean, extremely solid. You will not move them. They not playing about it. Don't joke about it. They coming for you if you do. So there's things like that. But the personality structure of the nine is like, well, I don't know. That might create some separation or some conflict. And so I don't really want to feel that in my body. So, I'll just kind of dial it back. But that doesn't help the nine at all, because eventually that creates a numbing effect to a degree, right? And then that creates this depressed feeling, right? Or like you are not as important, or your word is not your voice is not as important. Your voice is not heard, and that's really frustrating. You think the little bit of conflict that you're gonna create by saying what you really think is going to be bodily annoying, I guess I would say, or frustrating, but holding on to something that you should have said and you could have got it over with in like 5 to 10 minutes and been done, and your body's ready to move to the next thing, instead of holding on to something for days, weeks, maybe years, depending on what it is. You just need to say it. Ain't worth it. Get that conflict, feel a little bit of that separation. And sometimes you need that separation, right? Sometimes it's not healthy. Maybe it was a merging that you did that wasn't healthy. You got a friend, colleague, family member that be doing some stuff that you be like, you really dislike, or you really want to share how you really feel about it. Rather do it and see what happens for a short period of time than carry it for a long period of time. I'm telling you, it don't make no sense. So with type nines, that's one thing. One thing that type nines really have to do is they have to practice on speaking up and saying what's really on their mind and what's really on their heart. So that is your wants, your desires, and that's also your opinions, right? Because nines, it's powerful when they do speak up. It's so powerful. Like seriously, like I don't know if all the nines, if you're listening, if you're a nine and you're listening, let me tell you this: it's extremely powerful when you speak up. And from teaching a lot of different classes and working with people, it is also very sexy. I'm gonna say it. It is. I'm being honest, right? And I don't mean in a weird way, but it is just it's like ooh, that's attractive. Look at them. Like, it don't matter what nine it is. When they step into their power, when they step into their voice and being heard, it's like, whoo. And then, nines present feelings and facts, which is one of the best things that you can do. It's like, no, I'm not just going to tell you the facts and the opinions and my feelings, but I'm going to tell you the facts around the situation as well, which is also so important. So it is extremely important for nines to speak up, right? Which will make you a little bit more uncomfortable, and it may shift some of your friendships and relationships, and that's okay. They probably need to shift, right? They may not have been healthy, to be honest, from the jump, right? People just like, oh, you agree with me, and you're like, actually I don't agree with you. It's like, let me tell you why real quick. And people are like, oh, you don't agree? I thought you agreed the whole time. And it's like, no, actually I haven't agreed with you on 90% of the things that you usually come to conclusion about. But people don't know, right? Because the personality structure of the nine is really pushing all of that down, right? And so getting in touch with that anger gives nines the ability to really share what's actually going on inside of themselves, right? So they can be heard. And because that's one of the most beautiful things when a nine feels they're able to be heard and they step into their power. It's a beautiful thing. It's lovely, right? So that's something for type nines to really be aware of, because their personality will numb them out to feeling like they can't step up and say what they need to say. For type ones, the personality impediments or struggles that cause them not to be heard a lot of times is that a lot of times ones really struggle to speak from their heart space. And so a lot of times when they speak, it comes from the body. And what I mean by that is that there comes a lot of action words of what people should or shouldn't be doing, right? There's a lot of do of what a person should or shouldn't do. And so when you communicate only from there, you don't connect with the person. So, you may be saying all the quote unquote right things, but you're not connecting to the person or honoring that person's humanness, right? And if you don't honor a person's humanness, you don't connect with them, because it's kind of like, I don't, what I'm saying, to a degree, people don't care, if you tell them to do the right thing or not, right? If you don't honor them as a person, they're not going to listen. You know what I'm saying? So one of the biggest things for type ones to be careful of their personality is that they have to watch not communicating from the heart and not connecting with people, right? Because they can give a list of rules, details, demands to a degree of how things should, could, suppose to be. But if they miss connecting to the actual people that they're speaking to, then the message is not going to connect and ones will not feel heard. And that's extremely frustrating as well for ones, not feeling heard, right? But you have to remember, eights, nines, and ones, when you create an environment because of your personality where people don't want to hear you, it makes sense that you're not being heard, right? Because maybe the person doesn't feel seen or safe to be able to share what they really need to share, okay? So this is very important. So for the type one, really do your best to communicate from your heart about how or what or why something should or you want it to be a certain way, because then you can connect with the person. And that even allows you to communicate at I would say a softer level, but it's not a softer level. It's just a more connecting level with the person. So now they get where you're coming from. And now they're more inclined to actually listen to you. So you're going to feel heard more, which is important. These three types, being heard is so important. And for other people who aren't eights, nines, and ones, remember this, like if you're actually like listening, because they want to be heard. So giving eights, nines, and ones a space to be heard is vital. When I worked in the school, it was so important if I had a kid who I knew was in the body triad to actually be heard. I have instances with eights, nines, and ones when I allow them to feel or allow them to be heard, where I really listen to them and actually allow them to truly explain and to truly get it out. My goodness, the whole body, somatic body, calms down. And now they're ready to say, okay, what maybe can be the next move so that I can do something productive, right? Instead of whatever just happened. What can we do to solve this issue, right? Or what do we do next? Instead of just being frustrated and angry and then just going in a swirl of anger, basically, and exuding it in the way that each personality type specifically does it, right? Eights, they're going to explode on somebody, right? Or they're going to be frustrated and come, pretty hard out, right? Nines, they'll just kind of disappear. They'll just numb out. It's like, whatever, it doesn't matter. I don't care, whatever. Or they'll just overly merge with someone to not deal with it, or ones, they bottle it up and become very angry at themselves. So, for being heard is very important. So if you're not an 8, 9, or 1, remember, this is one of the most important things that you can do for them is allow space for them to actually be heard. Give them space and give them time. And I know they all, yes, they all, including 9, can, when they are fired up about something, they can communicate very strongly, right? But if you can create a space for them that they can be heard, it helps them to also feel seen and safe. Right? All these things work together in such a beautiful way. So if you can do that, that's absolutely great. So it's a both and, right? The 8s, 9s, and 1s have to be making sure that their personality isn't getting in the way, right? If unhealthy anger is not getting in the way from stopping them from showing up and actually being heard on a consistent basis. And the people who are in relation or coworkers to 8s, 9s, and 1s have to make sure they have the space and the floor to actually be heard as well, right? All these things are important. So I just wanted to give you a short snippet of that because it's so important. Real quick, short episode for you all. Something else is very important. This year, 2023, there's the IEA Enneagram Conference. I definitely want to invite you all to sign up for it. It'll be in the show notes or in my comments or Instagram and all that stuff. But I really encourage you to to be able to attend it. It's going to be phenomenal. I am one of the people who is helping to plan it, and it's going to be hybrid. And we want to make it an incredible community of Enneagram people really trying to change the world. The theme is unite and ignite. All right. So that's all I have. And for 8s, 9s, and 1s, if you feel yourself getting frustrated and you feel that anger about to turn up in the space and your personality is about to do its thing and take you out of being present, take a deep breath, make a smarter choice so that you can be heard. And we'll see you on the next episode. Have a good one. Bye.